Hello and welcome to The Load-In, a United Theater podcast with me, your host, Lee Metzger. I'm back again, and so are you. Welcome back. Thanks for watching and listening. Today we are joined by Max Finnance, a master cicerone and a professional beer educator. We're going to be talking about Hoposium, this upcoming event in just a couple days here. And we're going to get into all sorts of stuff, what that event is going to be, who he is, and why you should care. So stick around and we'll get into that after this. Music plays. Hello, welcome back. It's me, and I'm delighted to welcome Max Finnance to the show. Hello, Max.
How you doing? Nice to be here, Lee.
Excellent to have you. Max, I am beyond excited for these events. I'm a huge beer guy. I love craft beer.
Yep.
For those who don't know, I worked almost a decade in the craft beer industry. Have incredible amount of friends. I have an incredible amount of friends.
If nothing else is true, that's absolutely true.
It'll blow your mind how many friends I have. But it's a great community, and it's also just a beautiful. It's art, it's science, it's incredible. How did you find yourself in craft beer?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was in the Navy out of high school. After the Navy, I went to college, and like a lot of folks do, I bartended my way through college. And as I was getting closer to completion of my degree, I realized that I got a degree in biology, but I really didn't want to work in a lab for the rest of my life wearing a white coat and staring through a microscope. And I was much more passionate about the beer that I was serving on Friday nights at the bar. And so I started looking for ways to turn that into a bona fide career, and found a job doing sales with 6 Point Brewery down in Brooklyn, New York. And I've been in that world ever since, about a decade now.
Were you always interested in because you're a professional beer educator at this point?
Yeah.
What is it about the education side that attracted you?
I think I'm just a nerd and a geek at heart, right? Like, if I get interested in a subject, I want to learn more about it personally. And then as I was reading all these books about beer, taking classes and doing whatever I could to further my own education, I found all these things that I thought were really interesting, and also heard people repeating some of these myths that weren't true but had been even put into books at that point. And sort of I wanted to help correct the story, but also just share the awesome things that I had learned myself.
It's kind of interesting how it is such a science.
Yeah.
It's truly science. There are people who leave lifelong careers in chemistry and biology to go into craft beer, and they're like, oh yeah, I know how to do all this stuff because it's science.
Absolutely.
While still there can be, it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was like an unexamined industry or profession, but like you said, it kind of existed outside of scientific. There were no scientific journals on craft beer, or there were, but in very niche communities.
Yes, and that's the key right there, is super niche when you talk about that stuff, right? If you look at the really big brewers, right, the Anheuser-Busch, the Miller Coors of the world, they have had scientists on their team for hundreds of years, right? The brewers, literally going back hundreds of years, have figured out that the more science you can learn about it, the more consistent and quote unquote better your beer is going to be. But at the smaller brewery scale, even having a quality lab is not necessarily a foregone conclusion. And so that intersection of the art and the science of it, I think, is where you find the best beer possible, but can't take the science for granted.
Yeah, for sure. And beer is also art.
Absolutely.
What has your experience been? Because you travel across the world, you judge beer events in South America, in Europe, all over the place. So I assume you've seen like all sorts of beer and beer styles, things that maybe shouldn't go in beer but have found their way into it.
Yeah.
What are some experiences that stand out to you?
On that last point, the things that like maybe just because you can doesn't mean you should. I think that seems to still be sort of a uniquely American thing. Although I guess I've had some international beers too that have had some just zany ingredients and stuff that like, okay, I understand that you can do this, but it hasn't made the beer better, right?
Yeah.
But there are beers in America now that look like purple milk in the glass, and things that are so over the top in their flavor expression that you lose any sort of semblance of balance. And for me, a good beer always starts with a balanced beer, right? If I want to drink a beer, that means I want to taste the unique ingredients in that and not just have it taste like blueberry puree or chocolate chips.
Yeah.
Right? If I want to eat chocolate chips, I'll eat chocolate chips. I don't need it to be carbonated.
Yeah, I remember like we would be brewing beer and like we did all sorts of like collabs and stuff. And collaborations were a great opportunity to go outside of your comfort zone and try something new. And I remember like throwing cocoa nips and shaved coconut. We were throwing full birthday cakes into the mash.
Yeah.
And you got to ask yourself at some point, is this beer?
And I don't want to sound like Debbie Downer about any of that, or the old guy on the lawn, yelling at the kids to get off the lawn. I think beer should be fun too, and I'm here for the cocoa nibs and the coconut in the beer. I just want that to be a balanced edition, right? I want it to still taste like beer with coconut or with cocoa nibs, right? Birthday cake, sure, have fun with it if you really want to, as long as it still tastes like a good balanced beer. That's where I always come back to sort of judge quality.
So you've traveled the world. You've a world tour of beer, which is, I believe, the title of this upcoming event that we have here.
Yeah.
What's the angle with this specific event?
Right. So some of the viewers and listeners of the podcast might have attended the first two, right? The first one was sort of a foundation to make sure we were speaking the same language. The second one was really diving into the sciencey aspects of this. And to an extent, they've built on each other. But this third one, while you might understand a little bit more of the science if you attended the second one, it'll also stand on its own as an experience that you could come enjoy this world tour of beer without having attended the first two. I'll make sure that everyone's on the same page there. And so the goal here, and one of the things that I really love about beer, is that some of the best beers in the world are also incredibly accessible, right? If you are a wine fan and you want to drink a 100-point Bordeaux from a premier vineyard in Bordeaux, it's going to cost you several $100s, if not several $1,000s, right? You can drink a 100-point beer from the premier breweries in Germany for $7 and not have too much trouble finding it, even in Rhode Island or Connecticut or around New England. And to me, that's always been something special about, the accessibility of world-class beer. So this week on Friday night, we're going to be tasting 4 of my favorite beers from around the world and talking about how the regional brewing practices and ingredient selection from those countries plays into how those beers taste in the glass, and then what it is about those beers that I love.
That's a really interesting point that I may not have thought about before. Just the accessibility of beer in reference to accessibility of wine. What do you attribute that to? Is it because of I know wine is kind of shackled to the terroir of the location of where the grapes grew, whereas beer is it's not as shackled to that. Like you can get grain, barley, anywhere.
Yeah.
And it's probably a lot more affordable.
Absolutely. From a raw ingredient standpoint, wine is more expensive to make, right? If you want a ton of grapes from the most exclusive vineyards in Napa or in Bordeaux or in Burgundy, you're going to pay thousands of dollars just for 1 ton of grapes, right? If you want to brew a beer in the style of the best Hefeweizen in the world, you can source your grains from lots of different farms in Germany, and no one will know the difference. You can source those hops from any of thousands of acres spread across Germany, and no one will know the difference there. So there's wider availability of ingredients, which leads to lower cost of ingredients. I think part of it goes back also, hundreds of years, or if not millennia, and really, the class structure that has sort of separated wine and beer. Wine is still thought of as a more highbrow, white-collar beverage, that is fancier. Most of the Michelin star restaurants around the world have outstanding wine programs. Not very many of them have outstanding beer programs. There are brewers around the world that are trying to change that and are charging accordingly more for their beer, but you're still not going to find many breweries that even break the $100 mark for a single bottle. I don't even know if I can think of more than one or two around the world, right? A $50 bottle of beer is very, very, very expensive. A $50 bottle of wine is entry level.
That's Tuesday night.
Maybe not, entry level might be a bit much, but entry level into the luxury wine world.
Totally. It's summer. It's beautiful out.
Yeah.
I would probably say that this is my favorite weather to drink beer.
Yep.
What are you sipping on right now?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if what I'm sipping on is quite so seasonal as it is for a lot of people. I love a really good crisp lager year round. I also am not opposed to opening up a big stout in the summertime. I might do that while I'm sitting inside in the AC, not necessarily, on the beach or next to the bonfire on a hot night. But I think I drink more across the board all year round than probably most people do. That being said, last night I had a really good alt beer from Suarez Brewing up in Hudson Valley. And last weekend I was drinking a couple of lagers from Fox Farm over in Connecticut.
Oh, yeah.
And as long as beer's good and refreshing, and it usually is, especially when you serve it a little cold.
Oh, yeah.
Then I'm happy.
Well, as we all know, it's always stout season. Shout out to Tom M. Do you have like a go-to macro that you like?
Miller High Life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
High Life for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think of the true macro. I mean, I love Gansett Lager.
Yeah.
I love a good PBR, but I think of the true macros, High Life is the best option.
For sure. Well, this comes to the portion of the show where I check to see if anyone has left a review. Would you like to stick around for it?
Absolutely.
Excellent. All right, let's take a look. So, listeners to the show, if you want your review to be read aloud and a live shout out on the show, this is what you do. You go to the Load In on Apple Podcasts and write a review and give us as many stars as you think we deserve. So let's take a look to see if anyone has left a review. No one has left a review. So this could be you. This entire period of time during the podcast could be me saying your words, which is a pretty cool thing.
I mean, think of all the friends that Lee already has, and then...
Do you want to be added to that list?
It's a high bar.
It's a high bar. Max, thank you so much for coming on the show. It means a lot. We've known each other for years, and it's cool to have this experience. We've had many experiences within breweries, and now to have experiences without them, it's a fun time being your friend.
I appreciate it, Lee. Yeah, thanks for the invite. It's been fun here talking to you, and hopefully some of the folks who are listening and watching today will come out and check out the event this weekend, and I hope not to disappoint.
Do you have anything that outside of the Hopposium series, which runs, we have 2 more events here. We've got a world tour of beer, and then we have our special Oktoberfest Hopposium event, which is very exciting. We'll probably have you back to talk about that if that's cool with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, maybe I'll even break out the Lederhosen for the podcast since we're on video.
We might have to, so stick around and watch for that. But are there any other events that are coming up or any shout outs that you want to plug here?
It sounds like a boring answer, but no. I'm really excited about both of these events, but I don't have anything else in the short-term works that would be, open to the public.
Outside of drinking High Life on the beach, right?
That's it. Find me drinking the High Lifes on the beach.
All right, find Max at your local beach, surrounded by empty bottles of Miller High Life. This has been The Load-In. I've been Lee Metzger. Thank you so much, Max. And I'll see you all next time. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to the United Theater Podcast Network. If you enjoyed this episode, we encourage you to subscribe to our show so you never miss an episode. And if you could take a moment to leave a review, we'd greatly appreciate it. Your feedback helps us create content that you love. So hit that subscribe button and leave us a review, and we'll see you on the next episode.